Hello and welcome to another video, this time with a review for Drova after 100%. What does 100% mean? I completed 100% Steam achievements and additionally I explored the world thoroughly to really get a grasp on the game, its mechanics and what you can find. Now for my initial thoughts on the game, so you can start the game on multiple difficulties. You have your story difficulty, you have your classic difficulty and you have your iron difficulty. The iron difficulty is not much harder than the classic one, but it prevents you from reloading to a previous state, so you can complete achievements if you have forgotten them. If you're going in blind, I would highly advise you to go with the classic difficulty so you can explore multiple pathways or multiple choices in dialogues without locking yourself out of an achievement or even a quest reward. The story difficulty makes enemies deal no damage, so it's strictly for experiencing the story. The world design is very good. You can explore a very large chunk of the world, littered with puzzles, multiple enemies, rewards for spells, rewards for weapons, even armor you can find. You will find hidden quests. You can even find a hidden ending if you find every piece of a key and solve every puzzle tied to it. It provides you with a very rewarding experience. Now after exploring a little bit, you're going to find multiple NPCs. Interacting with those will reveal there are two factions, the Remnants and the Nematon. One faction is here for freeing everyone and getting back to the land before Drova, so to the real world. And one faction wants to build an empire and the land of legends with very strict laws. They are very religious, worshipping a god, which reminds me very much of Gothic 1. There is also a third faction you can join regardless of your choice if you want to join the Remnants or the Nematon. Those are the Ruin Raiders, those are tied to the secret ending, and in doing so you will uncover a few secrets. You will find notes that describe what happened to the ruined civilization that came before you. You will find NPCs with knowledge that is more than just a few thoughts on something. They can exposition dump you if you are willing to listen to them, and sometimes the environment is all that you need. You will see the destruction left behind by the bygones. You will ask yourself, why is this happening? What can we do to solve this? Characters are well written, especially on the Nematon side. You really feel that companionship, especially in the expedition, one time on the side of Nematon and one time on the side of the Remnants. I vastly prefer Nematon for this one, even if they are a little bit crazy. Now, let's talk about the 100% because exploration is a huge part of the 100% run. There is a ton of hidden quests, a ton of hidden interactions you have to do to complete the 100%. You have to interact with animals, for example. This is actually very hard if you do not know which animals you have to find, what you have to do to interact with them. There's a ton more animals in the game that you actually don't need for the achievement. So you need to interact with, I think, 16 different animals. Those are very specific animals, some of which are very obvious, they have names, and some of which are very not obvious. You will find them scattered throughout the game, and sometimes they run away and you have to find them again for another achievement. Like for example, a cat. You have to feed that cat 10 fish, but the dialogue option doesn't change. The interaction doesn't change. So if you give up after 4 times, you don't get the achievement because you don't know about it. In the same swamp, you can find loot. With that loot, you can find another NPC that now had something to do with that loot. And this unlocks something different. If you explore everything 100% in your first playthrough, you're looking at probably 50 hours without a guide. You're probably going to miss a few achievements because some quests are really hidden and obscure. You get a note, for example, and you have to remember where you need to go. Because if you don't, you have no other hints where to go. You have to remember everything in your brain because you cannot take notes in the game. You can technically mark something on the map with ink. So if you find, for example, a door that you cannot open, you can mark this one, but the map gets very cluttered after a while, so it's not really a possibility to mark everything. So you have to remember and play in one go. Or you start a second playthrough. So your first playthrough is blind, your second playthrough is going to look at the achievement list, and then you move on like that. I personally looked at the achievement list in the global tab in Steam and then planned my run around that. So overall, a very hard game to 100%. It is not possible to do this one in one run. You need 2 runs because you cannot reload in the Iron Man one, but you need to join the other factions. So you have to at least play the other faction to a specific point. If you go to the last dungeon, complete the last dungeon, you get 1 ending. You are going to overwrite the 2 automatic save files and you cannot complete the second ending. So you need to complete another run. Now, As for the difficulty and combat of the game, the combat is very fluent, very responsive, and very skill-based. Nothing in the game feels unfair. If you have deep knowledge about locations of spells, locations of items, locations of specific enemies, you can just play around that. You know something is coming in that section, so you can prepare accordingly. On my second run, I was blasting through the game. I knew exactly where everything was, so I just ran up to the item, picked it up, equipped it, and was OP right away, because I knew the item would be there. I knew how scaling worked, so I rushed through the game in 8 hours. You can probably get there in like 6. But I wanted to explore some specific parts of the game again, and I wanted to join the remnants this time around, so that took a little bit more time because I was listening to the dialogue of the remnants to spot some differences, which I will be talking about a little bit later, because there are differences, but not as many as I would have liked to. Now, as for the difficulty is very much just a knowledge thing. The game is actually pretty easy if you know how combat works, if you know how dodging works, if you know how blocking works, if you know how enemy patterns work, attack patterns work. If you don't know anything about that, the combat is very hard and the world is very unforgiving. But once you know everything, especially after chapter 3, once you get the better armor, better weapons, better trinkets, the game becomes very easy. Especially magic becomes very overpowered later on, which ties into progression. Progression in this game is tied to your weapon, to your armor, and to your learning points. Now you can spend your learning points at a specific NPC, you have to pay them something to learn something from them, or you have to do a specific quest for them so they unlock. Those NPCs have a cap for their stats, so you need to progressively unlock better NPCs so you can learn from them. The stats the game provides you with are strength, dexterity, and mind. Strength increases physical damage, dexterity increases crit chance, and mind increases magical damage and focus points. Focus points are spent for abilities or spells, so you will eventually put some point into mind regardless of your build. Some builds will require a little bit of dex, some builds don't require any dex because they can get automatic critical strikes anyway, like for example the fist build. So you dump everything into strength, scale your damage that way. As for customization, you have a helmet slot. You can unlock a lot of cosmetic options there. So an onion helmet, a winged helmet, a mushroom helmet, whatever. The armor slot provides you a little bit of extra oomph. Not only because it provides you with armor and magic resistance, but also with additional stats, like for example 20% additional magic damage and 6 focus points, or stagger resistance, or less stamina consumption on dodges. You can also find some other armor, like for example a banded armor with 10% crit chance. So to get one of those is very exciting. The best armor in the game, you have to find pieces and then smith it. For the best weapon in the game, the story is a little bit different. You find relics in the game. Those relics you can give to the Ruin Raiders for the secret ending, and once you find 7 of them, you can buy the best weapon in the game just from them. This is for every type. Those cost a lot of money, but they are the best weapon in the game. So you can get those very early on, and it kind of kills exploration for weapons at least. And then there is trinkets. Those are very, very powerful and provide you not only with stats, but also with additional effects. Like for example, after dodging, you deal 50% more damage. Or you are rewarded with a specific ring later in the game, I think in chapter 4, so very late in the game, that allows you to recover HP that you lost just after getting hit. So those can be very, very powerful and enable you to just turn your brain off. Next, I want to talk about the difference between the two factions. One faction is very unorganized, has the theme of just being bandits or outcasts that banded together and formed a faction. They want to get out of Drova. That's the remnant camp. And then you have Nemeton. This one is the established faction, has laws, has a community. Everything feels a little bit nicer. They live in harmony, but they are also zealots and will actually burn people if they commit one crime or banish them altogether from their city. It is also very hard to get into their city, into their settlement, but the overall theme for Nemeton just resonated more with a lot more people based on the achievement list. I think Nemeton is also designed a little bit better. You're actually given incentives to join that faction compared to the Remnants, where you get ripped off multiple times, where some of the faction leaders send bandits after you to rob you. So I thought those were a little bit unlikable. And I also experienced their story and the differences between those two factions in later stages of the game. But overall, I found there to be only minor differences. Some dialogue is recycled, some events just mirror each other. So one character dies on this side, one character dies on this side. They take different routes, but there are not many differences between those two. So you will see a few more things with the Remnants. But overall, you can basically skip the dialogue altogether because you will know everything already after going with Nemeton. which brings me to side quests. Now for the side quests in this game, those are designed marvelously. I enjoyed every minute of them. You'll find a huge amount of quests in this game. All of them are just different. Every NPC has a reasoning for what they're doing. Everything has a purpose, be it for rewards, treasure hunting, finding rare items from animals that they want to sell, acquiring more gold, acquiring more silver, helping someone find their eggs, uncovering a crime like stolen weapons, fixing a match in the arena, breaking out of the pit after you are extremely overpowered and just run around the pit with your bare fists beating up guards. And if you miss something on the first playthrough, which I did miss, you can come back in a second playthrough and then experience that quest line from the other side. Like for example, you can find bandits, you can beat those bandits up, and you can find their hideout and explore that hideout after you have beaten them. But you can also get captured by them and they will transport you to their hideout, and you can play a completely different story with more XP, with more exposition for specific characters, something that was very, very much appreciated. The replay value here is huge, and I highly recommend the second playthrough just for the different perspectives on side quests. Next, let's talk about the positives and negatives. The game has a pretty decent soundtrack. It's not the best I have ever heard, but it's decent. The environment and world building is extremely good. Exploration felt amazing. The story is very unique and very interesting to play. Side quests are great. And the combat felt really, really good, especially once you master it and you know what you have to do. It felt amazing. Speaking of combat, monster variety was really, really good. You will see multiple enemies with different attack patterns. Even if it's the same wolf, you will see they attack faster, they use multiple attack chains that they haven't previously, so you need to adapt to those enemies. So it always felt a little bit fresher. They even introduced some enemies with magic and some more morbid looking enemies later in the game. So the monster variety is excellent. As for the negatives, there is 3 I want to talk about. The first one being build variety. There is not much build variety in this game. You stack strength in the first part of the game, then you pick up a little bit dexterity if you want to crit more. If you don't, you just pick up mind and then spam spells and your attacks in between. So basically every build evolves into the same thing, at least stat-wise. Some of the trinkets change, but it's not much. Then there is faction differences. There's not much in terms of faction differences. You can experience a lot of the faction before you join the faction. So after that, it's basically the same. You will see a little bit of extra content if you choose a different faction, but it doesn't amount to much. And the game gets very easy very fast, especially if you know what you're doing. First up, a conclusion for the 100%. I thought this one to be rather hard. You need to at least check out the achievement list so you know what you want to do, so you can plan your route and you know that you have to interact with certain NPCs and certain quests, so you don't skip out on them, especially because they disappear once you progress the world. So you can lock yourself out. You will also have to do 2 playthroughs, which is actually quite enjoyable. And the conclusion for the game, I highly recommend this game. This game is a 9 out of 10 for me. An excellent experience and an instant classic for anyone that loves Gothic, Alex, or any Piranha Bytes games. May they rest in peace. Some games have just something special about them, and this game definitely does. Anyway, this sums up the video. If you liked what you saw, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. This is my second 100% review. This took a little bit of time, so if you have any feedback, please comment down below. So, see you next time and bye.